Welcome, Penn Staters, to the Football Letter podcast. This week, we're speaking with Matt Fortuna. Matt is a 2011 Penn State grad, and in school, he covered Penn State football for the Daily Collegian. And in his senior year at Penn State, he covered the team for the Pittsburgh Tribune Review. Matt's covered college football for more than a decade, including 6 years at ESPN and 6 years at The Athletic. Matt has also served as president of the Football Writers Association of America from 2019 to 2020. Currently, Matt's based in the Chicago area and oversees the Inside Zone with Matt Fortuna, an online community where he takes you inside the world of college football as only he knows how, providing info, insights, commentary, and much more. And we were fortunate enough to run into Matt 2 times this season at Illinois Northwestern. Glad that he's joining the podcast this week. Matt Fortuna, welcome to the Football Letter podcast. How you doing today, sir?
John, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I'm always happy to talk about college football and especially Penn State football. Let's start with kind of like how the bio intro wrapped up, where, I got the chance to meet you in person at Illinois this season, and also Northwestern. You got a chance to see Penn State in person twice. Let's start there. Based on what you had seen and heard about Penn State, what were your expectations of seeing the Nittany Lions in person? And then how did those expectations line up with what you did see?
Yeah, John, I think that they were pretty on par with what I expected for both games. I think, the defense was dominant in both outings, particularly the Illinois game. I mean, they forced 5 turnovers, and it felt like it could have possibly even been more. Illinois has really, since Brett Bielema got there, has always had a great defense, and they made life a little more difficult for Penn State's offense than it probably should have been early on. But once that dam broke, it was a pretty one-sided game. And similar with Northwestern, Ryan Field, this is the last year of that high school stadium as we know it. And for an 11 a.m. local start time, it can be a bit of a sleepy environment. I mean, we heard James Franklin earlier that week talk about practicing without music to simulate the crowd noise or lack thereof. And I believe that was a 10-10 game at halftime. So we saw that kind of take effect and play out the way we thought it would for 30 minutes or so. But again, once Penn State got untracked offensively in the second half, and once they knocked out Northwestern's quarterback, Ben Bryant, things got a lot easier for them there, and they were able to win by 28 points. So I think, look, this is one of the best defenses in the country, if not the best. It's an offense that does a phenomenal job of protecting the football. And it's a group that, at least on paper, and at least from what we've seen for the most part this year so far, looks like it has a chance to be James Franklin's best team in Happy Valley.
Yeah, for sure. Certainly, possibly the deepest team. He's been talking about that all season. We're very familiar with those 11 a.m. kicks at Illinois Northwestern. With Penn State's defense, Manny, Diaz, it just feels like they are so much more, at least philosophically, just aggressive. They're going to metaphorically punch you in the face all game long. What about Manny Diaz? What about Manny Diaz's time at Penn State has maybe, stood out to you a little bit?
Yeah, I can't say I'm too surprised. I mean, I got to know Manny Diaz pretty well when he was a DC at Miami. He's, let's not forget, the founder of the turnover chain, which spawned a bunch of spinoffs across college football. And his defenses did a great job at Miami. And honestly, his head coaching tenure at Miami was not bad. He got a raw deal there. And once he left there, I figured he'd land on his feet somewhere good. And he happened to be landing as Penn State's defensive coordinator, and it's been an elite unit so far. You look at that secondary and the number of elite players they have back there. It makes life very, very tough on opposing quarterbacks, opposing receivers, and it gives them a chance every time they line up. And they've just been turnover machines so far this season. I go back to that Illinois game. I want to say it was the 4th or 5th turnover they forced that game, and the sidelines going crazy as they tend to do. And Manny Diaz is off the side, and he's just given this kind of jubilant fist bump to absolutely no one. And you just see the excitement on his face and through his emotions with how good that unit has played. And they've really lived up to their billing so far. I know they're loaded with NFL talent, but as we've seen in other locales across the country, that doesn't always translate to on-field success if they're not playing together as a unit. And Penn State has.
I'm so glad you mentioned Manny's celebration, because we've noticed that throughout the year. I mean, this is a guy who, at least it appears from all points, he loves being the defensive coordinator at Penn State. I know sometimes going from being a head coach to a coordinator can be a little bit of an adjustment. It feels like he's made that adjustment really, really well. He's embraced kind of being in Happy Valley and just celebrating those plays. And at Illinois, 4 of those 5 turnovers were right on Penn State's sideline. So it felt like when they got that turnover, the entire sideline ran onto the field. So yeah, I just want to give Manny Diaz a little bit of a shout out. Glad that you mentioned that. You're listening to the Football Letter podcast. We are speaking with Matt Fortuna, Penn State grad, college football expert. He oversees the Inside Zone with Matt Fortuna. We've got the website rolling at the bottom of the screen. So Matt, you're a Daily Collegian alumnus. A lot of guys covering college football are our producer, Vince Lingaro, behind the scenes making things happen. He wrote for the Daily Collegian. A lot of folks have a huge affinity for the Collegian, even people who didn't write for the Collegian, just were at Penn State, spend every day on campus reading it. It's more than just a student group from what I'm told and from what I hear. How did your time at the Collegian prepare you, for covering college football, not just the day-to-day grind, but, just kind of building relationships and how to handle yourself and, perhaps some other areas as well?
Yeah, John is huge, no question about it. It meant everything to me. And, with the benefit of hindsight and perspective, it's almost like what I'm doing now is easy compared to that. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, there are different elements of life that get in the way, so to speak. But when I look back at my time, particularly covering the football beat, which was 2009 season, I was probably doing something either in that office or doing something related to covering that team 60 hours a week on top of classwork. And I don't say that to pat myself on the back. It's just one of those things you don't think about in real time. And now I look at this job, which is similarly demanding. And, I have a family at home, which is similar to Manny as well, but I don't have classwork. It's just interesting. The perspective I could see it through now. It's just the number of hours we put in was really something. And not just with the football program either, right? I mean, I covered men's tennis as a freshman. I ran in, I had some exchanges with that head coach that weren't all that pleasant, that absolutely helped me earn my stripes and build my confidence in future years. As far as just learning what this business is about, covering men's soccer, club ice hockey, men's basketball. I was fortunate enough to cover them at a time when they won the NIT, which was a big deal at the time because it was a program that had not experienced really any success whatsoever for much of the previous decade. So the relationships I built at the Collegian, the number of professional lessons I learned from going through that process, you cannot overstate what it meant to me. And so many of my good friends, both personally and professionally, are people I met. And, it was in the James Building at the time. I believe it's on campus now, but that I met in the basement of the James Building, just working hard every day, staying up all night and doing it in the name of a print newspaper too, right? Like we had a blog, we kind of started with a Twitter then, but it was all about, waking up the next morning and having people pick up a copy of your story and learning something that they couldn't learn if they picked up another paper elsewhere. And it was just a very, very demanding and rewarding process that I look back on both fondly and with a little bit of shivering, right? Like, man, I put in that much work when I was 20, 21 years old and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Like it's almost impressive when you look at it through that lens. So it was a lot of fun. It's very rewarding. And I owe much of my great time and experience at Penn State to everything I learned in the James Building at the Collegian.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Matt. And it's in line with what we hear from other colleagues. Shout out to Ryan Jones, who oversees the Penn Stater magazine. Another Collegian alumnus. Believe you and Ryan know each other, perhaps even good friends, and have crossed paths many times. We'll have a couple lightning round questions here and then we'll get you on your way. But before we do that, just one last kind of longer form question. You referenced the Big Ten expansion next year, 18 teams. I don't know if I'll ever get used to saying the Big Ten has 18 teams, but I think that's where we're going. We could cover this topic a lot, but I guess I'll ask you, what's one thing that you're interested to find out, how things will fall into place? There's so many different ways that you can go with this, but is there one or two things that you're looking at and wondering, this is something I'm going to be keeping my eye on next season?
Yeah. I mean, the excitement from a football standpoint is going to be awesome. I mean, I understand all the negatives with realignment and all the backlash this has generated. I get it. I mean, if you're anything other than a football and maybe men's and women's basketball player, this is not good for you, right? I mean, part of the uniqueness of Penn State and State College is how remote it is and how it's such a unique college town and it's hard to get to. And when you get there, it's a tough road environment. And I've always, out of all the places I've been fortunate enough to visit in my career, I've always thought State College, Pennsylvania and Eugene, Oregon are probably two of the most like unique in the sense of like you've got superpower athletic departments here that are essentially in the middle of nowhere. And oh, by the way, now they're in the same conference, 3,000 plus miles away from each other, and they're going to be playing each other regularly in every sport. Like that part of it to me is mind blowing. And, outside of the football realm, it probably is not a good thing. And I think there'll be a day of reckoning, in the not so distant future in regards to that. But as far as the football field, it's interesting, right? I mean, the Big Ten recently released their schedules through 2028, their opponents through 2028 for each Big Ten school. And some schools get 3 annual rivals and Penn State has 0. James Franklin's unrivaled, hashtag is being taken a little too literally. I think it's in some ways good for competitiveness because when you're in the East, you're playing Ohio State and Michigan every year. And now you're not. Now you're going to replace one of those opponents in a given year with another elite opponent. I will pull up the future schedule here. I mean, next year you've got Ohio State, UCLA, and Washington at home. That's going to be really fun. You get Oregon at home in 25, USC at home in 26, Michigan at home in 27, Ohio State, Oregon, UCLA again at home in 28. Like these are very, very exciting matchups. And to go the other way, the burden of travel, if you will, is going to be on those West Coast schools and those schools that are usually used to playing in sunny California in November. They're going to be going to Iowa City and Ann Arbor, Michigan, State College, Pennsylvania in the middle of November. That's going to be a shock to the system for a lot of those coaches and players. But the positive, if you're a current Big Ten school, going out to the Rose Bowl or to USC or to Seattle or to Eugene is going to be really fun. I mean, in the case of UCLA, they've got attendance issues there, and I can guarantee you, pretty much every home Big Ten game they're going to have, at least that first cycle around, is going to be close to a sellout because there are a ton of Big Ten alums out there, and there are a ton of excited fans at Penn State, at Michigan, you name it, that have no problem getting on a plane and going to LA and experiencing the culture there and going to the Rose Bowl to watch their team play a football game. I mean, we saw it at Ryan Field, right? I mean, Chicago's cool, but Ryan Field's not exactly a bucket list destination when it comes to college venues. So I'm excited from a from purely football standpoint. I'm very excited about what this is going to look like. I covered a USC game at Notre Dame, this month, and USC got killed. It was their first loss of the season. They looked totally unprepared, and I'm not saying that's completely because of the elements, although it was a classic Big Ten weather. But it gets your mind thinking, right? Lincoln Riley recruits a certain type of player and plays a certain type of system. Does that go completely out the window now that he's going to be playing these road games in cold locales in October and November? I don't know. It's one of many fascinating threads that I can't wait to see unravel over the coming years.
Yeah, so true, Matt. If you just kind of, set aside all the logistics about, the things that we don't have to worry about, and you just focus on the football, it is going to be a lot of fun. And our producer, Vince Langaro, he said he can't wait for USC to play at Kinnick Stadium in like late October or early November, and it's going to be like a 14-10 game. Yeah, when you're growing up in Southern Cal, you're not dreaming of, playing in Iowa City or, Columbus or Happy Valley in, October, November. For them, if it gets down to we were out at the Rose Bowl, it was in the 50s, and the photographers, you could not imagine how unhappy they were. So, there will be a lot of good times coming up, at least different times.
I saw Lincoln Riley at what I guess was the last Pac-12 Media Day this summer, and we were both waiting to go into separate rooms, and we were chit-chatting. I said, "What venues are you most excited about visiting next year?" And he's like, He's like, "We went to Columbus and we won, right? Isn't that the toughest one? Like when I was at Oklahoma." And I said, "Yeah, I mean, Ohio State's traditionally the best team in the Big Ten, but I'm telling you, State College, Pennsylvania, and Iowa City, Iowa." No matter how good or bad Penn State or Iowa is, especially at night, there's a sense, I think, if you're a visiting team and you're in that stadium and you're in that town of like, where the hell am I and how the hell did I get here, right? Like the home field advantage is real at both those places.
Yeah, for sure. We'll get you out of here on a couple of kind of lightning round style questions, Matt. Favorite Penn State game you've ever attended or covered?
It's a good one. As a fan, and I say this with great irony because I have a Notre Dame podcast now, my second game was the first all-stadium whiteout against Notre Dame in 2007. Jimmy Clausen's first start for the Irish. Penn State destroyed them. We were all excited, and then we realized Notre Dame would go 3-9 that year, and Penn State wasn't all that great themselves. So as a fan, that one and the whiteout the following year against Illinois, another one that looked like a huge win at the time, then Illinois didn't go bowling that year, was really, really special. Covering Joe Paterno's 400th win with a pretty epic comeback against Northwestern my senior year that was a special one, no doubt about it. In part because of, how they won that game. Um, and, I mean, not to go negative, the whiteout against Iowa that they lost in 2009 with game day, because I was covering that one for the Collegian, and that was my first experience of that environment, in a professional setting. That was pretty unique as well.
All right, same question. Favorite game you've attended or covered not outside of Penn State?
I would probably say the national championship game between Alabama and Georgia the first time in 2017, 2018. I was in the end zone. I have a great shot on my phone of Devontae Smith catching the game-winning touchdown. And I'll remind you, the play before that, they got sacked. It was 2nd and 26. The game was in Atlanta, so it was all Georgia fans. They thought they were about to win the national championship. And I've just never heard a place just completely flip like that, with literally, like, it was a walk-off home run to win the championship. And that was really cool to see, really up close as well.
All right, last question, Matt. When you get back on campus here at University Park, what's at the top of your to-do list? Or to-do list?
It's being in Chicago is you could probably imagine, having come out here for a couple of games now. It's not the easiest place to get to, and I still blame myself for not getting back nearly as much as I should. I was back for a reunion in 2018, and then this past spring, my wife's 2 kids decided to do a road trip to New York. So that's where I grew up. I had family out there, and we broke it up by spending a night in State College. And I have a 4-year-old daughter and a daughter who's now 8 months. And we went to the Creamery, of course, as you do, whether you have kids or not. And my 4-year-old, I pointed to my freshman dorm right down the block there, and she couldn't get over the fact that I lived across the street from an ice cream parlor where I also happened to go to school. So I hope I sold her and the rest of the family on the Penn State experience with that one, class of 2047, what have you. And then we were able to go. I made some calls. We were able to go on the field the next day and take some pictures, and she rang the victory bell as well. So a little spoiled for that first trip. I'm not sure every trip back there will be that way for her if she chooses to go back there at some point, but it was definitely a unique experience. I still have my phone background, a picture of the 4 of us on the field outside the Beaver Stadium gates, and it was a really special experience. I was glad I got to share that with my family.
Yeah, for sure. Those are lifelong memories that you'll cherish forever, Matt, with your family. Thanks so much for stopping by the podcast. We'll have to have you on again, if not later this season, maybe talking Penn State in the Big Ten championship or playoff, and certainly next year when we get to 18 teams. And there will be a lot to discuss. Matt Fortuna, thanks so much for stopping by.
Awesome, John. Thanks for having me.
Hello, Penn Staters, and welcome to the Football Letter Podcast. This week, we welcome Johnathan Thomas, Letterman running back and kick returner for Penn State football. Johnathan wore number 20 for the Nittany Lions, and in the Success with Honor category, 2-time Penn State grad, 2017, 2018, really maximized his time as a student athlete at Penn State. Currently, he's in Atlanta working as a business development specialist for Quest Healthcare Solutions. We're going to talk with Johnathan about his time at Penn State. He had a big-time kickoff return touchdown against Indiana, really grinded his way in his career, earned the playing time in his senior year. And if we talked with Jonathan's teammates during his time at Penn State, big-time fans of him. And so when you have your teammates as champions for you in the locker room, you're doing things the right way. We're going to catch up with Johnathan today. It's going to be a lot of fun. Johnathan Thomas, thank you so much for joining the Football Letter podcast. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm blessed, man. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, of course. This will be fun. So you were a standout in high school at St. John's Prep. Can you talk us through the decision deciding to play for Penn State, maybe a little bit about the recruiting process, and what about Penn State made this the school for you?
Yeah, man, it was a journey. I was first committed to the University of Maryland. I committed my junior year to the University of Maryland, and one thing that drew me to University of Maryland was I just felt comfortable there. However, Bill O'Brien was the head coach at Penn State, and this is a lot of a fact that a lot of people don't know. We actually have the same high school football coach. So Bill O'Brien actually went to St. John's Prep. He had a crazy senior year, rushed against Brockton for like 200 or 300 plus yards. And Brockton's a pretty good school. And Bill O'Brien reached out and said, all right, we weren't going to offer you just because we had to get guys in the DMV area to come to Penn State, but he gave the offer. And at that time, I was kind of hesitant about Penn State just because of everything that had went on beforehand. And I essentially saw the game against Michigan, 2013. I was on my couch. Now, this is was it 4 overtimes or just 3?
Oh, yeah, 4.
One of the 4 overtimes. I was sitting there watching that game, 8 o'clock game against Michigan. And I said, man, I have an opportunity to play there. And I'm turning it down. And I think by the next weekend, I was committed to Penn State. So that was a major decision for me to make, obviously decommitting from Maryland, but I'm so glad that I made that decision, and it's definitely paid dividends for me to, have went to Penn State.
Yeah, always love to hear a Bill O'Brien name drop, Bill O'Brien story on the podcast. Yeah, Bill Belton running in the touchdown in the 4th overtime against Michigan. We hear from recruits a lot. I remember Mike Gesicki. Like, once you see the whiteout as a high school standout, it's hard to turn that down. And so we understand what you're saying, Johnathan. Hey, once you got to Penn State, what were some of the ways that you grew as a player, as a person? Your college time is always a formative time of your life. How did that time at Penn State kind of shape you and help you grow as a player and a person?
It was such an uncomfortable time. And at the end of the day, we know that there's no growth in the comfort zone. So I'm growing as an individual, as a player, as a man. My time at Penn State, that's where some of the most growth came in my life. And, redshirting my freshman year, it's never easy just to sit and watch. And however, you have to make the sacrifices to put you where you want to be. And sometimes making those sacrifices, you don't end up being where you thought you were going to be. And so just having to be patient and just sticking the course and staying the course and showing up each and every day was something that I had to tell myself each and every day. It's a mental game, obviously we're in there lifting weights, running, cracking the pads, the physical aspect of the game, we know what that's about. But it's a mental game, and I think that's one of the things that helped me as an individual progress and grow, realizing that, life is all about your mindset. And so having the mindset of showing up and realizing that the world doesn't revolve around me, and that, I'm interconnected amongst my teammates, my family, the university, that's where I realized that, all right, I have to stay the course and just keep on pushing on. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, but as I know, nothing easy is worth anything at the end of the day. So.
Well, you fought for playing time. You earned the playing time. You had a bunch of big time moments your senior season in 2018. I still remember the kickoff return for a touchdown you had against Indiana. You actually ran like right by me. I was standing on the sidelines. Our photographer, Steve Manuel, got some great shots of you throwing them up on the screen. Also had a big game against Kent State earlier that season. Knowing that you had worked so hard for those opportunities and was patient, what did it mean to you to have those opportunities and then really take advantage of them?
It's a good question. It goes back to the coaching that I heard all along while I was at Penn State. You got to be prepared when your moment comes. So I remember getting interviewed after the Indiana game, and they said, how did you feel? I said, the coaches put us to be prepared for that moment. And, at the end of the day, the ball came to me and I just took off. And, KJ, me and KJ were back there together, and he made some blocks. I bounced off of him, cut it back to the right, had to make the kicker miss, and was gone. And, the funny thing about that situation, my dad, he's no longer a state trooper, but he was on the executive security guard, security detail for the governor of Massachusetts, who is now the NCAA president. And he jokes a lot. Charlie Baker, he jokes a lot like, did you really step out on the 4? Now, I tell everybody that was a touchdown at the end of the day. So, obviously, I think it was Trace who scored after that, or Miles, but that's a touchdown in my books. And I go back and watch that play from time to time, and I didn't step out. So.
No way. It's in the record books now forever. And so touchdown.
Yeah.
Talking about kind of the impact that you had with the team, both on the field and off the field, I wanted to ask you about a couple recognitions that you received at the team's award banquet. You were presented with the Iron Lyron Award, which is presented by the strength and conditioning staff. And then along with Nick Scott, you received the Bob Mittinger Memorial Award for being the ultimate teammate as a squad member who exhibits courage, character, and social responsibility. Can you take us through a little bit about, what did it mean to receive those recognitions, especially given the significance of what they stand for?
I have this quote here. It says, you reap what you sow. So at the end of the day, I showed up and I realized that, once again, it's not about me. However, to get that recognition and from my peers and from my coaches, it was a cool moment for sure. And I wasn't expecting it. So I was thankful and really appreciative of, my teammates giving me that vote for that award. But, I just was me. At the end of the day, I came into the building and I tried to let my light shine and try to be the best teammate that I could be, best player that I could be, and control what I could control at the end of the day. And that's what I think separated me, was my mindset about some of the situations that I was in, and just where I was and how I handled things.
Transitioning to your professional role in Atlanta, I was wondering if you wanted to take a moment and update alumni and fans and what you're doing at Quest and sort of what your responsibilities are and how you're having an impact down there in Atlanta.
Sure. Yeah. So I work with Quest Healthcare Solutions. Matter of fact, the CEO of the company is a Penn State guy as well. So when I got down here in Atlanta, I was training down here for the NFL. Like the area, my buddy who played in the NBA decided to buy a house down here, and we moved down to Atlanta. Like the area, like I said, and ended up making it home. And as far as the job, they reached out to me, and it's healthcare sales. So essentially what I'm doing is I am talking with hospitals and ambulatory surgery centers about their staffing needs, and we provide physicians for them. And one of the things that made me get into the healthcare space was my family. So my mom, she's a physician. My brother's a physician as well. And just being able to talk with them about, just the ins and outs of the healthcare field, it seemed beneficial for me. And I've been with them for about 2.5 years now. And, it's been going well. It's my first job out of, playing football. So, it's still a transition from, obviously playing professional to going in to the corporate world. But, I think I'm making the most of it. It's been a pretty good opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, that's great to hear, Jonathan. Look, we're at the Alumni Association. We're here for you. So if there's something we can be doing to help you out in your career, please let us know. You're listening to the Football Letter podcast. We're catching up with Letterman running back and kick returner Johnathan Thomas. Jonathan is down in Atlanta now working professionally, and we're talking about his time at Penn State with the Nittany Lions. All right, Jonathan, you know what it's like to walk out through the tunnel at Beaver Stadium, night game, daytime kickoff. It doesn't matter. That place is electric. What does it feel like, or what did it feel like to play at Beaver Stadium?
It was pretty numbing my freshman year, even when I wasn't getting on the field my freshman year, just to feel and hear the stadium rocking. And I mean, before we go out for just stretches and just, doing simple handoffs and things like that, getting ready for the game. And the whiteout, there will already be 102,000 people in the stadium before even kickoff happens. And I mean, it's a crazy experience. There's nothing like it. We played at Ohio State, Michigan, played in Ireland. Nothing beats Penn State, Beaver Stadium.
Well, you mentioned a couple of the road venues. I don't know about a favorite road venue, but was there, a specific team or stadium that you like to visit? Maybe the hotel was a little bit nicer, the flight was a little less bumpy. Was there a road trip that kind of stands out to you?
Well, besides bowl games, obviously we played in the Rose Bowl game, we played in the Fiesta Bowl. In season Iowa game, when we played Iowa, I believe this was 2017. I mean, the game went down to the wire, and I think it's mid-September. It's smoking hot there, and their stadium was rocking, and the sideline, our sideline, and where their fans were literally right up on top of us. It was such a crazy experience, and being able to play in that environment was pretty cool. So, hats off to Iowa. but it's nothing like the whiteout or anything like that. But it was pretty cool to go into a sea of yellow, and it was just us. It was just us there, and us and the coaches and the players, and we went out there in a mission. And we came out victoriously, and that's the first thing that came to my mind when you asked that question. Iowa.
Yeah, Jonathan is right about the proximity of fans to the visiting sideline. I actually don't even know how it, like, just from like a conference standpoint, how they can be that close, because fans could reach out their arm, and if it's long enough, they can grab like the player's shoulder pads. When you guys were on the stationary bikes, I mean, there might have been a foot between you and the fans, and so yeah, it was as difficult as it was on the field. Like there was no room for comfort with the fans, and I'm sure they were telling you what they thought.
Oh yeah, that comes along with it though. But we came out victoriously. So,
hey Jonathan, wanted to ask, how often do you get back to campus? And when you do get back, what are one or two things at the top of your list that you like to do? Whether it's maybe head back to Lash or go to the Creamery or maybe something else.
I haven't been back for about a year and some change now, so I haven't even got to see all the new renovations at Lash. When I do go back, I actually went back for homecoming. I believe it was 2 years ago. It was raining, but one of the things that me and my wife like to do is go to what's the spot called? Big Bowl. She's right here, so yeah, I had to go to this place called Big Bowl. They have some of the best noodles there, and it's one of our favorite spots. So definitely, I like the Creamery as well, but I've just never been such a ice cream fan that I just have to have it. But obviously, everybody talks about the Creamery, but Big Bowl is my number one spot to go to for sure. Right next to McDonald's, I believe it is.
Yep. Downtown College Ave. Is it the Big Bull Noodle House?
Yeah, big.
Okay.
Big Noodle House. Yeah.
Well, if you can get back to State College soon, please do, because downtown is changing in such a way that like 6 months from now, like you can't tell what's going to be here, what's not going to be here, and so it will be, when you're back in town, make sure that you stop by there, my friend.
Aren't they putting up high rises, and it's looking like a city, so to speak?
It really is. I mean, we're sort of, not that this is off topic, but it's like I posted a photo the other day. It was like downtown State College or downtown Chicago. Like there are high rises at both ends of downtown, and a lot of, like, we just learned that the building with the brewery is going to go away, and people have the G-Man is gone. That's old news, and so yeah, if you've got a favorite spot downtown, I just encourage you, wrap your arms around it every time you're back in town.
Okay.
All right. So just real quick, we're wrapping up here with Johnathan Thomas. You mentioned the whiteout this year. That will be Iowa. The 2017 game that you referenced, that was the Jawan Johnson touchdown at the end from Trace McSorley, where it was the walk-off touchdown for Penn State. Yeah, that's not a game that you're going to forget. So let's wrap up with this question, Jonathan. Again, you know what it's like. You mentioned the Rose Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl. If you were going to visit this current team, this year's team, maybe you'd visit them in training camp, stop by. What advice would you give them about, how to prepare, maybe not just for week 1 against West Virginia, but maybe, what advice would you give them for the season, knowing what it takes to compete in the Big Ten?
I would tell the team that it's the little small details that make the difference. Coach Franklin harps on this all the time. It's about the process. So when you realize that you can't look down the road to week 5, you have to worry about the first game. And then after the first game, you need to worry about, getting your body right. So, and then you have to worry about practice Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's the small little details that make the difference. So you take care of the small things, the big things will take care of themselves. And that's like winning a national championship. So it starts small. So don't despise the small things. So that's what I would tell the team, and just to do the little things right and with the spirit of excellence.
Great advice, spoken like a true Big Ten champion. Johnathan Thomas, we're so glad that you were able to stop by the show. Wishing you all the best. If you ever need anything, we're here for you at the Alumni Association.
I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right, Johnathan Thomas, everyone.